Hey, wake up, a voice said. Master Shaak Ti opened her eyes to see Han Solo pointing the blaster at her face. She felt her hands tied down as she looked around for Plo. However, he was not in the room.
Where's my companion?
Don't worry, your Keldor friend is chilling in the other room. He'll be fine as long as you follow the procedure. Understand? Han said with his signature smile.
What are you talking about?
Shaak asked. I'm in deep with some real bad creeps. They took my lady, and I'm getting her back.
Your lady?
She questioned.
You captured 2 Jedi for your girlfriend.
Heck no, Han chuckled amongst himself. No woman is worth this much trouble. Shaak was confused.
Then what are you talking about?
He knelt down next to the Jedi and pulled out his holoprojector. This is my lady. A 3-dimensional holographic image appeared of an old beat-up spaceship.
Your ship?
She said.
You kidnapped us because of that ugly piece of junk?
Han grew offended. Look, Jedi, I didn't come here for your opinion, okay? I'm here to talk about a possible truce. One that could benefit both of us. Shaak looked at the scoundrel. While he was admittedly handsome, she didn't believe him.
Why should I trust you? You already betrayed me once.
Because you don't have much of a choice, do you, dollface? Han replied. Besides, I still technically held up my side of the bargain from before.
What do you mean?
I brought you to the men that you were looking for. He nodded his head toward the window, signaling her to look outside for herself. Shaak peered out the window to see a slimy hut along with 4 armed guards. She turned back to Solo.
You're working under a hut?
I wouldn't exactly say working under him, more like working for him. Shaak raised an eyebrow at the absurdity of Han's statement.
What's going on?
You want to know what's going on? Fine, I'll tell you. You see that hut down there? He works for Jabba, Han said, scratching his head. And well, I kinda happen to owe Jabba a couple credits. Kinda.
And for collateral, they took your ship?
He smiled back. You know, you Jedi are smarter than you look.
So where do Plo and I come into this?
His signature smirk began to fade from his face slowly. I'm not a bad guy, but my back was against the wall. They took my ship and wanted to kill me. However, they gave me another choice. Either die, or capture you two. While the Jedi Master was disappointed in him, she started to understand the situation better. I've been in this life for a long time. I want to be free of it. I'm tired of running from both the Republic and the Hutts. But if I help you Jedi, I don't know, maybe you could help me. Shaak smiled towards the smuggler. She knew he had a scummy past, but she could sense the kind heart Solo possessed underneath his tough exterior.
What do you have in mind?
Outside of the ship, the Hutt and his guards stand wait. The Hutt spoke in his native tongue.
Be ready. Solo is a slippery one.
The ship's hatch opened, and out walked Han, Greedo, and Shaak Ti. Next to them hovered a carbonite slab that contained Plo Koon. Ti looked to Solo annoyed. He looked back and whispered, I told you he was chilling. They approached the hut and it spoke.
Solo, I see you brought me the Jedi.
Han gave a subtle wink towards Shaak. Of course. You know I never let Jabba down. The Hutt glanced at Solo in disbelief. Han shrugged his shoulders. Okay, except for those 5 other times. The guards came closer to seize the Jedi. Wait, Greedo said, pulling out his blaster. Everyone looked towards the Rodian. Greedo, Han said. What are you doing? Taking advantage of the situation, he said, pointing his blaster towards him. Solo here plans to betray you, sir. They gonna try and escape. Han stared daggers at his former ally. Well, so much for doing this the easy way. Han quickly pulled out his pistol and shot Greedo in the chest, killing the Rodian instantly. He then handed Shaak Ti her lightsaber hilt and hit a button on Plo Koon's slate, causing it to flip on its side, acting as a wall between them and the criminals. The guards attempted to shoot Solo and Ti, but the carbonite barrier blocked their shots. One by one, the Jedi and the smuggler worked together to take down each guard, until it was only the Hutt that remained. Han aimed his pistol towards the defenseless Hutt. I want my keys to the Falcon. Now. The Hutt grabbed the Falcon's keys and gave it to him.
Here, have them. Just don't shoot.
Solo grabbed the keys and prepped his blaster. You don't want to die? Fine. Then promise me you'll leave me alone.
Solo, I cannot do that.
The Hutt said.
This is above me. What Jabba wants, Jabba gets. You know that just as well as I do. Killing me will have no effect on your fate.
The Hutt looked towards the Jedi.
Besides, I am defenseless. It's not the Jedi way.
Shaak Ti looked towards Solo.
He's right. It would be wrong to do so. You'd be no better than Jabba.
Han contemplated the situation for a moment, but quickly re-entered reality. Fine. If you can't clear my name, then I guess I'm no better than Jabba. He quickly pulled the trigger, sending a bolt of red blaster fire straight to the Hutt's face, killing him instantly. They stood quiet for a moment before Shaak broke the silence.
You shouldn't have done that.
Look, Jedi, You didn't know that, Hutt. Okay, I do. He deserved it. Trust me. He then turned towards the direction of where the ship was parked. Now let's just get to my ship and unfreeze your buddy. On board the Falcon, Shock unfroze Plo and brings him up to speed on the situation. However, Han soon called them into the cockpit. Hey Jedi, you might want to take a look at this. We have a situation, he said, pointing to the holochat. The Jedi watched as news coverage from all over the galaxy reacted to the destruction of Coruscant. Well, I can't take you back there, Han said, taking in the situation. What now? Shakti looked towards Han.
You want a new beginning? You want to start fresh?
Han nodded his head. Of course.
Then, from this point on, you are now an ally of the Jedi,
she said, turning towards the window of the cockpit.
Enter the coordinates for Naboo. It's time we avenge Coruscant.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the conversation part of this video. If you guys have any future questions you want to ask for the next video, let me know in the comments below, and if I use your questions, I'll give you a shout out. I'm also going to try to make these a little bit shorter than I usually do, so instead of doing like 10 questions, I'm just going to do like maybe like 5 or 6 each video. So if you want more questions in the future, let me know, but if not, that's okay too. Now with that said, let us jump into the very first one. Now this one is from Darth Prime, and he says, why would Luke want to avenge the death of Padme? That's something that I can see Anakin doing. Okay, so you gotta remember the characters in this story are different from the characters we know in canon. I mean, Luke himself, in canon, he started from nothing, and that was kind of where his humble beginnings began, because he was pretty much born with nothing. And now, you know, this Luke, the one that we know in this story, you know, he has his family, he has a mansion, his mom's a senator, his dad is an ex-Jedi Knight. You know, they are well set off. They have a lot of good things going on for them, you know, not just financially, but also they're completely different characters because of these different circumstances. So you have to remember that Luke isn't fully ready yet to handle what he's going through. We know from the previous chapters that Anakin has been teaching both Leia and Luke how to use the Force and how to be Jedi, even though the Council don't really know he's doing it. Anakin is still, of course, wanting his kids to be ready for anything, being ready to fight, because let's say something happens and they need heroes. Anakin wants them to be ready. So Anakin isn't really training his kids because the Jedi Council said no, and he's kind of like, well, I'm going to train him anyway. You know, he's not doing that. It's more of like he's getting them ready for, let's say something happens to the Jedi again. There's at least 2 warriors that he has ready and prepared to train. Now, of course, while they do have training here and there, they're still not 100% like at this point that they have to be for the specific situation going on in the galaxy. Because this is a big moment. A lot of Jedi just died. The majority of Jedi just wiped out in an instant. Not just Jedi, but also the majority of all the galaxy's leaders. They were on Coruscant for a massive Senate meeting when it exploded. But that's pretty much my best way to kind of explain why Luke is more of an angry person, because while he has gained power through his father, and his father taught him a lot of different things as far as using the Force, Luke isn't 100% ready to handle that power and to control his anger. And so that's kind of why he is the way he was. Or I should say that's the reason why he was the way he was in the previous chapter. So, yeah, I guess we'll just have to see when we see him again what happens next. So our next one is from Adrian Chavez, and he says, I have a question about the story. Why are they so good, and why are the cliffhangers so intriguing? Well, I wrote them that way, and you guys keep coming back, so I guess I'm doing a good job. Next one comes from Mike Orr, and he says, where is Anakin? The last time we see him is in chapter 6, and all we see is Luke and Leia in this chapter. Where did he go? Okay, so I mentioned this in pretty much the beginning of the chapter right away. You know, the whole arc going on with Yoda and Obi-Wan in this chapter is them waiting for Anakin to see what's going to happen. Remember, Yoda can sense the dark side. He can sense Vader. He can sense that there is a turmoil going inside of Anakin, and Obi-Wan wants to help, but ultimately, Yoda and Obi-Wan, you know, they have to sit back and let Anakin kind of decide what he's going to do, because it's ultimately going to be his decision. So if they sit back, you know, they know Anakin knows what happens if he lets the darkness control him. We know Anakin can handle himself, but this is the biggest thing Anakin had to really go through in a very long time, since even losing his mother. And even then, you know, it's kind of a different situation. And so we have to see what's going to happen. So all Obi-Wan and Yoda can do is just sit back and just wait and see how Anakin handles the situation. And the reason why I had Anakin go back into his bedroom was because that was the bedroom where, he and Padme, grew their entire family. They lived there. That was a very safe spot for him. That might have been like his place where he can be with his, the love of his life and just be happy. And the bedroom represents that in the way that it reminds him of Padme. And so he needed to go in there. He needed to think. He needed to be in a very safe, calm area. And he just went in there, and now he just needs to think. And it all comes down to what Anakin's going to do. Will Vader return? Will Anakin stay on the path of light? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I guess you'll just have to like, subscribe, and turn notifications for more. So next one is from Nicholas Aguirre, and he says, can you bring Thrawn into the story? Maybe. That's actually a pretty cool concept to kind of do. Thrawn isn't not alive. We don't have any true proof of him being dead. So it's possible he could come in. I mean, guess you got to keep watching. Next one's from AJC3. He says, what happened to Ventress during this story? So a part you have to remember is that this is a sequel story to my What If the Jedi Council Survived Order 66, right? And before then, Ventress, pretty much anything that happened before Order 66 and the Clone Wars is still canon. So characters that were like, who died during Clone Wars time, before anything that had to do with Order 66, they died. Or unless they were a Jedi Council member, in which case I wrote them a different storyline, because it just kind of, that was the whole point of the story, was to do that. However, some characters who weren't Jedi Council members, they died. Like Aayla Secura, she died because she wasn't a Jedi Council member, and therefore her story wasn't changed. Ventress dies before Order 66 even happens during the Clone Wars. Well, during the very end of the Clone Wars with Quinlan Vos. So yes, Ventress would be theoretically dead, but I mean, who knows? She might come back. I guess you'll have to wait and see. Next one comes from James Compton. He says, so Commander Cody is dead, but what about the other civilian soldiers with Vos, Ahsoka, and Rex? Are they dead, yes or no? Okay, so this is a good question too. People were actually asking about this in the previous, chapter 7 when I released that. And the way I viewed it in my head, I should have wrote this down, so this is actually my fault, but the way I viewed it was the rest of the soldiers stayed behind after the battle was done, and now they're just doing like the cleanup parts of stuff, just trying to figure things out. Ahsoka, Rex, and Quinlan, they kind of went on their own. They flew together to go take care of this situation. They found the holocron, and then they're on their way back to Coruscant when everything just kind of hits the fan. And so those civilian soldiers are just still back on the planet, just kind of, doing cleanup work, I guess you could say. Like the ship that Quinlan, Rex, and Ahsoka were on it was like a Jedi ship, like a big Jedi freighter, not that big, kind of like a Millennium Falcon-ish size. So enough to hold a good amount of people, but you couldn't hold like a whole army like they had. So they're just kind of hanging out. Next one is from Carolina Lanzio, and she says, why is the episode so short? So pretty much when I write these episodes, I don't try to pad them out. I really don't like when books, movies, TV shows, whatever, they try to stuff all this extra story in to make the story longer. Ultimately, I just want to get the full story across without overdoing it. And I think I succeed. Sometimes chapters are shorter than others. Sometimes they're a little longer. Sometimes they're really long. Like, I think it was like the last chapter of my What If the Jedi Council Survived Order 66. That was a really long chapter compared to the other ones. It was almost double the size. But that's because there's so much content, so much story, and so much different character elements I had to put into that part of the story to kind of finish it off, put a little bow around it, and send it off. So as the story goes on, it's not necessarily that I'm making chapters smaller or larger, because they're all part of one big story. Some chapters are small, some chapters are big. Ultimately, it's one big story, and I just feel like the most important part of a chapter is not to make it long. It's supposed to make it hit home. It's supposed to send the message. It's not supposed to last forever. It's supposed to just send the message, entertain the crowd, even if it's short. It's supposed to have that whole situation behind it. So that's kind of why I do that So yeah. But there you go, guys. That is all the questions I got for this conversation part of the video. If you want to be featured in the next video's conversation part, make sure to leave questions in the comments below and you might just be featured. But thanks again for watching, guys. I'll catch you later. Peace.